Hey there, welcome back to Chronicle Keepers, or welcome for the first time if you're just discovering us. Tonight, we're traveling to one of history's most fascinating moments of collective delusion, the Dutch Golden Age, Amsterdam, 1637, where the most advanced economy in the world convinced itself that flower bulbs were worth more than houses. You're about to experience the world's first recorded speculative bubble, Tulip Mania, where fortunes were made in days and lost even faster, where ordinary people, weavers, servants, carpenters, thought they'd discovered the secret to instant wealth. Spoiler alert, they hadn't, and neither have you. Before we dive into financial ruin, if you genuinely enjoy these historical deep dives, go ahead and like or subscribe, but only if you want to. I'm not going to manipulate you with artificial scarcity or FOMO, unlike the tulip traders you're about to meet. Drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is. Are you in bed, on a couch, pretending to work? Get comfortable. Dim the lights if you haven't already. Turn on a fan if that helps you sleep. Maybe grab some water, because we're going to be here a while. All right, congratulations. You've just arrived in Amsterdam, February 1637. You've heard tulips are making people wealthy overnight. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's trading. The opportunity seems real. Let's see how quickly you lose everything. Early 1637, Amsterdam. You step off the boat, onto the dock, and the city hits you all at once. The smell first. Salt water mixed with tar from the ships, with bread baking somewhere nearby, with the faint rot of fish from the market. The sounds, Dutch being spoken rapidly all around you, mixed with French, German, Portuguese, English, the creak of ropes and wood as ships unload cargo from every corner of the known world. And the energy. There's something electric in the air, something you can't quite name yet, but you feel it. Everyone seems to be moving just a bit faster than normal, talking a bit louder. There's money here, serious money, and opportunity. Amsterdam in 1637 is the financial capital of Europe, possibly the world. You're looking at a city that shouldn't exist. Most of it is below sea level, reclaimed from the sea through engineering and sheer Dutch stubbornness. Canals cut through the city in perfect concentric semicircles. Narrow merchant houses line the waterways, 4 and 5 stories tall, their gabled facades decorated with ornate stonework. These aren't the homes of nobility. There barely is nobility here. These are merchant houses, belonging to traders, bankers, ship owners, people who made their money through commerce, not inheritance. The Dutch Golden Age is in full swing. Walk through the city and you see it everywhere. The Westerkerk is being built, a massive church that will dominate the skyline. Art studios are churning out paintings. Rembrandt is working somewhere in this city right now, though you wouldn't know his name yet. The printing presses are running constantly, producing books, maps, pamphlets, and at the heart of it all, the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, the Beurs van Hendrik de Keyser, the world's first stock exchange building, opened just a few decades ago. Inside, merchants trade shares in the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, the Verenigde Oostindische Compagnie, the world's first major publicly traded corporation. You can buy shares, sell shares, trade them like any other commodity. The profits from spice trade, from colonization, from ventures across the globe, all of it flowing through this building. The Dutch Republic won its independence from Spain only recently. Decades of brutal war finally ending in a truce. And in that hard-won freedom, something remarkable emerged. Religious tolerance. Well, relative tolerance. This is still the 17th century. But compared to the rest of Europe, where wars are fought over Catholic versus Protestant, where heretics are burned, where Jews are expelled, the Dutch Republic is a haven. Jews fleeing persecution in Spain and Portugal. Protestants fleeing France. Free thinkers, merchants, craftsmen, they all come here. They bring their skills, their capital, their networks. And the Dutch banking system? Sophisticated beyond anything else in Europe. The Amsterdam Wisselbank issues credit, facilitates transfers, maintains depositors' accounts. You can borrow money here, real money, at interest rates that won't completely destroy you. There's a middle class in Amsterdam. Not just nobility and peasants, but people in between. Merchants, yes, but also clerks, shopkeepers, skilled craftsmen. People with disposable income. People who can afford art, books, nice furniture, and apparently tulips, because that's all anyone is talking about. Tulips. You're here because you've heard the stories. Back home, maybe you're from Haarlem or Leiden, or even from Germany or England. You've heard about the fortunes being made. A weaver in Haarlem bought a bulb for 1,000 guilders and sold it 2 weeks later for 1,900. A carpenter traded some bulbs he'd bought for 300 guilders and walked away with enough money to buy a house. Actual houses being traded for flower bulbs. People are mortgaging their property to buy tulips, selling family heirlooms, liquidating their entire savings, and making fortunes. The promise is intoxicating. One good trade, just one, and you're set for life. You could retire, buy a house on the canal, join the merchant class. You've scraped together some capital. Maybe you saved for years. Maybe you sold something valuable. Maybe you borrowed money from relatives who think you've lost your mind. Your family back home, they don't understand. They're flowers, your wife said. You're going to Amsterdam to trade flowers. But the numbers don't lie. The stories are real. People are getting rich. You arrive in Amsterdam and immediately head to one of the taverns where trading happens. Because here's the thing. There's no central tulip exchange. The stock exchange handles VOC shares, but tulips? Those are traded in taverns, in back rooms, in private negotiations. You walk into a tavern in the Jordan district. It's mid-afternoon and the place is packed. Men are crowded around tables, shouting bids and offers. Pieces of paper are being passed around, promissory notes, futures contracts. Someone rings a bell and announces a sale. Applause breaks out. A man next to you, dressed well, looks respectable, just bought something called a Viceroy bulb for 3,000 guilders. 3,000. You don't even make that in 5 years. He's grinning. His friends are clapping him on the back. Everyone seems to be getting rich. There's a strange social atmosphere here. You see servants trading alongside merchants, a chimney sweep negotiating with a banker. The normal social hierarchies, rigid everywhere else, they're dissolving in these tulip taverns. Money is the only thing that matters. If you can pay, you can play. But if you look closely, really look at the faces around you, there's something else underneath the excitement. Anxiety. Some people look ecstatic, yes, flushed with wine and victory, celebrating their successful trades. Others look strained, pale, sweating despite the cool February weather outside. You can't tell who's actually wealthy and who's drowning in debt. Everyone's dressed well. Everyone's buying drinks. Everyone's projecting confidence. But someone at this table is going to be ruined. You just don't know who yet. So, what exactly are tulips? You should probably know this. They're flowers, obviously, Originally from the Ottoman Empire, brought to Europe in the 1550s, they became fashionable among the wealthy, exotic, beautiful, unusual. Some tulips are common. They grow easily, bloom predictably, and cost what you'd expect a flower to cost. But certain rare varieties have what's called breaking. The petals develop these incredible striped or feathered patterns, flames of color against a contrasting background, red and white, purple and gold, each one unique and spectacular. What people don't know, what you don't know, is that this breaking is caused by a virus. It weakens the bulb, makes it harder to propagate. But it creates these stunning visual effects. The most famous tulip in the world right now is the Semper Augustus. White petals with red flames. Absolutely spectacular. Only a handful exist. One Semper Augustus bulb supposedly sold for 10,000 guilders, the price of a grand canal house. For a flower bulb, other valuable varieties have names like Viceroy, Admiral van der Eyck, General Bull. They're categorized and graded with the precision of gemstones. Here's the thing about tulips, though. They only bloom once a year in spring, April, May, depending on the variety. Then the flower dies, the leaves wither, and you're left with bulbs in the ground that you can divide and replant. This creates scarcity. You can't just grow more instantly. You have to wait for the growing cycle. But the bulbs can be divided, which means potential multiplication of your investment. One valuable bulb might produce several offsets that you can sell separately. And here's where it gets really weird. You can't actually see what you're buying half the time. You're trading futures, contracts for bulbs that are still in the ground, that won't be delivered until summer, after they're dug up. You're buying based on description, on reputation, on the word of the seller that this bulb is a genuine Viceroy and not some common variety. You're trusting a lot. You stand in the tavern, listening to the rapid-fire negotiations, the shouted bids, the technical terminology you don't fully understand. How many aces? Someone asks. Aces are a unit of weight for bulbs. You didn't know that 5 minutes ago. Is it broken or breeder? Broken means the virus has created the valuable patterns. Breeder means it's solid-colored but might produce broken offspring. Maybe, possibly. You don't know anything about tulips. You can't tell a valuable variety from a common one just by looking. You certainly can't predict which breeder bulbs will produce valuable broken offspring. The market is based entirely on speculation, on the belief that someone else will pay more than you did, that the prices will keep rising. The actual flower enthusiasts, the horticulturalists who got into tulips because they genuinely love the flowers, they've been priced out. They can't afford to participate anymore. You're not investing in beauty or rarity or botanical excellence. You're gambling, pure and simple. But everyone around you seems to know what they're doing. They're throwing around terms like they're experts. They're making trades with confidence. They're making money. The fear of missing out is overwhelming. You've come all this way. You have your capital. Everyone's getting rich. Why not you? You push your way to the table. Time to learn how this actually works. You need to understand how this works, how the market operates. So you watch, you listen. You ask careful questions to people who seem willing to talk. Here's what you learn. Most tulip trading doesn't happen at the stock exchange. That's for VOC shares, for legitimate securities. Tulips are traded in taverns. Specific taverns, actually. The traders have formed what they call colleges, informal associations that meet regularly at the same locations. There's one in a tavern in the Jordan, another in Harlem, others scattered across the Republic. You're standing in one now. It's smoky. Everyone's pipe is lit. The room is crowded, maybe 40 men packed into a space meant for 20. It's loud. Everyone's talking at once, shouting bids across the room, negotiating in clusters. And the wine is flowing. Freely. Constantly. Always a good sign for rational financial decision-making. Transactions are being recorded, but casually. A clerk in the corner with a ledger, writing down agreements. Sometimes people just shake hands. Sometimes they sign promissory notes. The formality varies wildly. Here's the crucial part. You're not trading actual tulip bulbs most of the time. You're trading promises. See, the bulbs are in the ground right now. It's February. They're growing. You can't dig them up until summer, June, July. After the flowers bloom and the leaves die back, that's when you harvest bulbs. So you're trading futures contracts, agreements to buy or sell bulbs that will be delivered months from now. You're buying a tulip that doesn't technically exist yet. Or rather, it exists, but it's underground and you can't see it, and you won't receive it for 4 months. What you get instead is a piece of paper, a promissory note saying, you have the right to a Viceroy bulb, weighing approximately so many aces, to be delivered in June. And then, here's where it gets strange, you can sell that piece of paper to someone else. They're not buying a tulip, they're buying your right to a tulip, your piece of paper. And then they can sell that paper to someone else. So you might be buying a piece of paper that represents a piece of paper that represents a piece of paper that, theoretically, eventually, represents a tulip bulb that's currently underground. Several layers of abstraction from the actual flower. The speculation ladder works like this. At the bottom, the most concrete level, someone actually buys a bulb they'll receive and plant in their garden. Direct ownership. One step up, futures contracts, buying bulbs that are still growing to be delivered later. Another step, options. You're not even committing to buy the bulb. You're buying the right to buy it at a set price. If the price goes up, you exercise your option. If it drops, you walk away. And then derivatives. Abstract financial instruments that are several steps removed from any actual tulip. You're betting on price movements, on indices of tulip values, on bundled contracts. Most of the traders in this room have never seen the tulips they're trading. A man next to you just sold 3 admirals. Has he seen them? No. Does he know where they are? Vaguely, somewhere near Harlem, he thinks. Does he care? Not at all. It's just numbers. Numbers going up. And the numbers are insane. You overhear conversations, and the prices being thrown around make your head spin. Common bulbs, the kind that cost a few guilders last year, maybe 5 or 10, are now trading for 1,000 guilders, 1,000. Rare bulbs, the truly exceptional varieties, are priced in the thousands. Plural. For context, you need context. A skilled craftsman in Amsterdam earns maybe 250 guilders per year, 300 if he's particularly good, 500 if he's a master of his trade. A nice house in a decent neighborhood might cost 1,000 guilders. A grand house on the canal, 5,000 to 10,000 guilders. Single tulip bulbs are trading for the price of houses. There's a famous list that circulates, possibly exaggerated, possibly not, of what one Semper Augustus bulb was traded for. 2 cartloads of wheat, 4 cartloads of rye, 4 fat oxen, 8 fat pigs, 12 fat sheep, 2 hogsheads of wine, 4 barrels of beer, 2 barrels of butter, 1,000 pounds of cheese, a bed, a suit of clothes, and a silver beaker. Basically, an entire farm's worth of goods and livestock, for one flower bulb. And prices aren't just high, they're accelerating, doubling weekly, sometimes daily. You hear someone say, they bought a Viceroy on Monday for 2,000 guilders and sold it Wednesday for 2,800. 2 days, 800 guilders profit. That's more than 3 years of wages for most people. You have your money ready, about 500 guilders total. Your life savings plus what you could borrow from your brother-in-law, who thinks you're out of your mind but lent you the money anyway. You're nursing a cup of wine trying to look confident when a man approaches you. He's well-dressed, friendly face. He's been trading for months, he says, doing very well. He's noticed you're new, wants to help you get started. How kind. He has an opportunity. Some Admiral bulbs, decent variety, not top tier like Semper Augustus, but solid, reliable. The kind of bulb that's been appreciating steadily. He's willing to part with one. Normally he'd ask 350, but since you're new, since he likes you, 300 guilders. Your heart is pounding. 300 guilders, more than a year's wages. For a flower bulb you won't receive until May, that you can't see, that might not even exist. But he's confident, experienced, successful. You can tell by his clothes, his manner. He knows what he's doing. And he says, casually, like he's doing you a favor, that admirals are about to spike. There's talk of a big buyer from France. Prices could double in a week. You negotiate barely, your hands are sweating. You agree to 300 guilders. He produces a promissory note, handwritten. It says you have the right to one Admiral van der Eyck bulb, approximately 400 aces in weight, to be delivered in May of this year, 1637. You sign it. Your hand shakes slightly as you write your name. He takes your money, actual silver coin, which you count out carefully while he watches with patient amusement. The transaction takes maybe 5 minutes. Wine is involved. You're both drinking, toasting your deal. You've just spent more than half your capital on a flower you cannot see, cannot verify, and will not receive for 3 months. You are now a tulip trader. The waiting begins immediately. You can't just sit on this contract until May. You can't afford to actually take delivery of the bulb. What would you do with it? You don't have land. You're not a gardener. No, you need to flip this contract, sell it to someone else for more than you paid. That's how this works. So you haunt the taverns. Every evening, you're there, listening, watching the boards where prices are posted, eavesdropping on conversations. Every discussion is about tulips. The Viceroys are up to 4,200. I heard someone in Harlem paid 5,000 for a Gouda. Switzers are moving, 600 guilders and climbing. Your variety, Admirals, is rising. 350 guilders, then 380, then 420. You're making money, on paper at least. You paid 300 and the market price is now 420. That's 120 guilders profit in 2 weeks. Do you sell? If you sell now, you lock in the profit. You could walk away, nearly double your initial stake, call it a success. But if you hold, if the man who sold it to you was right, if there's a French buyer, if prices spike to 600 to 800, the temptation is agonizing. You meet other traders, start to recognize the regulars. There's a weaver from Harlem. He's made 5,000 guilders in 2 months. 5,000. He used to make 300 per year. He's giddy, can't stop talking about it. He's already bought a better house. A merchant who quit his legitimate import business, steady, profitable, boring, to trade tulips full-time. Why spend months on a shipment from the East Indies when I can make the same profit in a week, he says. A nobleman, well-dressed, aristocratic manner. You later learn he's secretly bankrupt. His estates are mortgaged to the hilt, his family fortune gone. But he keeps trading, keeps projecting success. He might actually trade his way out of ruin, or deeper into it. A servant woman. You do a double take when you realize what she is. She's sitting at the table, trading alongside merchants and craftsmen. She owns contracts worth more than her master's house. Everyone has a success story. The weaver bought Switzers at 50 guilders, sold them at 900. The merchant turned 1,000 guilders into 8,000 in 6 weeks. The servant started with 20 guilders, her entire savings, and now has contracts worth 400. Nobody talks about failures. Not yet. Surely there are people losing money, but they're not here. They're not visible. They're hiding. The social mixing is bizarre. In normal Amsterdam society, these people would never interact as equals. The servant would bow to the nobleman. The merchant might do business with the weaver, but wouldn't socialize with him. Here, in the Tulip taverns, they're equals. Money, or the promise of money, is the great leveler. Greed creates democracy. There are red flags. If you're paying attention, if you're thinking clearly. A few people are trying to sell large positions, quietly, but you notice. A trader who's been successful for months is suddenly very eager to liquidate his entire portfolio. Some of the actual wealthy merchants, old money, established families, they're not here. They were early on. Now they're gone. Quietly exited. Prices are rising on what exactly? No news, no fundamentals. Tulips haven't become more useful. They're not suddenly edible or medicinal. They're just flowers. The government is starting to make concerned noises. There's talk of regulation, of limiting contracts, of requiring actual delivery instead of just paper trading. Your own inner voice, the one you're desperately trying to ignore, says, "This is insane," but everyone around you is so confident, so certain. They have explanations for everything. The French market is opening up. Tulips are becoming the currency of Europe. The Dutch are the best horticulturalists in the world. Our tulips will always have value. And you're up 50% in 2 weeks. You bought at 300. The market price is now 450. 150 guilders profit from doing nothing, from holding a piece of paper. Surely it will keep going. You calculate your theoretical wealth constantly. If you sold now, 450 guilders, a nice profit. But if it goes to 600, 300 guilders profit, more than a year's wages. If it hits 800, 500 guilders profit. Life-changing money. You fantasize, you can't help it. A better house, security for your family, maybe buy into a real business, something respectable. People would look at you differently. You'd have made it. You're smarter than you thought. You took a risk, and it's paying off. This is easy. People have been slaving away at trades and professions their whole lives, scraping by. And here you are making their annual income in weeks. You should buy more. You have 200 guilders left. If you could turn that into 300, into 500, the man who sold you the Admiral, he's back at the tavern. He has another opportunity, a really good one this time. You sell your Admiral contract for 500 guilders. 500. You paid 300 3 weeks ago. You just made 200 guilders profit. That's almost a full year's wages in less than a month for holding a piece of paper and waiting. The rush is incredible. Your hands are shaking as you count the coins, real silver, real money. This actually worked. The man buying from you seems just as happy as you are. He's convinced it'll go to 700, maybe 800. Good for him. You made your profit. You walk out of the tavern into the cold February air and you feel alive, vindicated, smart. You did it. You actually did it. And immediately you want to do it again. Bigger this time. Because if you made 200 guilders on a 300 guilder investment, imagine what you could make with 1,000. With 2,000. You look around the tavern and everyone else is doing the same calculation. Everyone's reinvesting, leveraging, borrowing. There's a phrase you keep hearing: you have to spend money to make money. The conservative traders, the ones who made a little profit and walked away, they're mocked, called cowards, timid. He could have made 5,000, but he settled for 500. Someone says, dismissively. Playing it safe seems stupid. Worse than stupid. It seems like you're leaving money on the table, like you're failing to grasp the opportunity in front of you. You have 500 guilders now, your initial capital plus profit. It's not enough. Not for the big trades. Not for the varieties that are really moving. So, you borrow. Credit is surprisingly easy to get. You go to a moneylender. There are several who specialize in tulip traders now. It's become a whole sector of the economy. You explain your situation. You just made 200 guilders in 3 weeks. You understand the market. You need capital to scale up. He barely hesitates. He'll lend you 1,000 guilders. The interest rate is 12% annually, but that's nothing. That's reasonable. You'll pay it back within weeks with your profits, months at most. The money changes hands. You sign a promissory note. It's that simple. You now have 1,500 guilders in total buying power. You rationalize it easily. I'll pay it back with profits. Tulips are appreciating faster than the interest accrues. This is smart leverage. This is what successful traders do. The thought, what happens if prices fall, does cross your mind for maybe half a second, but then you dismiss it. Prices haven't fallen, they've only gone up for months now. Why would they fall? What would even cause that? Tulips are valuable. Everyone agrees. The market is strong. The Dutch Republic is wealthy. No, the only risk is not investing. The risk is sitting on the sidelines while everyone else gets rich. Your second trade is bigger, smarter, more sophisticated. You don't just buy one variety this time. You spread your risk across 3 different types: a pair of Switzers for 600 guilders, a Gouda for 500 guilders, and a General Bowl for 400 guilders. Total investment, 1,500 guilders. That represents multiple years of normal earnings. Your entire borrowing capacity plus your profits. Everything. If you're right, if prices continue rising the way they have been, you could be independently wealthy by spring. Genuinely wealthy. House on the canal wealthy. Never work again wealthy. If you're wrong. You don't think about that. The contracts are for delivery in May and June. You have no intention of taking delivery, of course. You don't have land to plant them. You wouldn't know how to care for them. You're purely speculating. Trading paper. Betting on price movements. But you don't think of it as gambling. You think of it as investing. There's a difference, you tell yourself. You start to change. You dress better. You can afford it now, and appearances matter in the trading taverns. You buy a new coat, better shoes. You want to look like someone who's succeeding. You act more confident. You're a tulip trader now, not a clerk or a craftsman or whatever you were before. That was your old life. This is who you are now. Your family's reaction is mixed. Your wife is proud, maybe, or horrified, possibly both. You've brought home more money in a month than you usually make in a year, so she can't entirely disapprove. But she's nervous. She asks questions you don't want to answer. What if the prices fall? They won't? But what if they won't? Your friends are jealous or concerned, or both. Some ask for advice. Should they get into tulips too? Some warn you to be careful. Some avoid you entirely. You spend more time in the taverns than at your actual job. Actually, you've stopped going to your job. Why would you work for wages when you can make more in a day of trading than a week of labor? Your employer is not pleased, but you don't care. You'll pay whatever penalty. You don't need that job anymore. Your old life seems boring, pointless, a grey existence of small wages and smaller dreams. This, the trading, the risk, the potential, this is living. The psychological shift is complete. You've gone from prudent person to gambler. But you'd never use that word. You're a trader, an investor, an entrepreneur. Early February 1637. This is it, the absolute peak. Prices have reached levels that would seem like satire if you wrote them down. Common varieties, bulbs that literally anyone can grow, are selling for 1,000 guilders. Annual salaries for common flowers. Decent varieties are going for 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. Rare bulbs are selling for the price of houses, actual houses. The most extreme bulbs, the Semper Augustus, the legendary varieties, they're trading for estates, for fortunes that would set up multiple generations. The volume is massive, thousands of guilders changing hands every hour, in a single tavern. Multiply that across Amsterdam, across Haarlem, across the entire Dutch Republic. The wealth transfer is staggering. The taverns are frenzied. Men are shouting over each other. Clerks can barely keep up with recording transactions. The air is thick with pipe smoke and wine fumes and sweat and excitement. Fights break out over trades. Someone claims they agreed to 3,000 guilders. Someone else insists it was 3,200. Punches are thrown. They're separated. Trading resumes. Some people are drinking constantly, not eating, not sleeping. Just trading, drinking, trading, calculating, trading. It feels like a revolution. Like wealth is being redistributed right before your eyes. Like the old hierarchies, birth, land, title are being replaced by something new. Merit, opportunity, risk-taking. Anyone can get rich. All you need is courage and a little capital. It feels like the future, but there are cracks. A few major dealers, men who've been in tulips for years, who've made enormous fortunes, are trying to sell large positions. They're not making a big show of it. They're doing it quietly. But word spreads in the taverns. Did you hear? Vandermeer is liquidating everything. He's just taking profits. He'll be back. Maybe. Some varieties are showing price resistance. Buyers are getting harder to find at the top end. A Viceroy is offered at 5,000 guilders, and no one bites. The seller drops to 4,800, then 4,500. Finally, someone buys. That's not supposed to happen. Prices go up. They don't go sideways. Rumors of defaults start circulating. Someone signed a contract to buy a Gouda for 2,000 guilders and now can't pay. What happens? No one's entirely sure. The legal framework for these futures contracts is unclear. The government is discussing intervention. The states of Holland are talking about regulation. Limiting contracts, requiring actual delivery instead of just paper trading. Calvinist preachers are denouncing the tulip trade from their pulpits, calling it sinful, gambling, greed. a perversion of God's natural order. Some towns, smaller places, outside Amsterdam, pass ordinances against tulip trading, declaring the contracts unenforceable. But in Amsterdam, the party continues. These are just bumps. Noise, the envious and the timid, trying to hold back progress. The smart money stays in. Your portfolio reaches its peak. Your contracts, the 3 varieties you bought, are now worth 3,000 guilders on paper. 3,000. You invested 1,500 guilders, including the 1,000 you borrowed. You've doubled your money in less than a month. You owe 1,000 guilders to the moneylender, plus interest. But you're up 2,000 in profit. If you sold everything right now, walked away, you'd clear about 1,100 guilders after paying your debts. That's more money than you've ever had. More than your father ever had. More than you'd make in 5 years of hard labor. You're worth more than you've ever been. The temptation to cash out is real. You could take your profit and walk. Be safe, be smart. But everyone says February is just the beginning. March will be even bigger. The spring planting season, more buyers entering the market. French interest, English interest. If you sell now, at the peak of the market, what you think is the peak, you'll miss the real gains. The man next to you sold a Viceroy last week for 4,000 guilders. He's kicking himself because it just sold for 5,200. I left 1,200 guilders on the table, he moans into his wine. 1,200. You don't want to be that guy, so you hold. You'll check prices tomorrow, maybe the day after. You'll sell when the time is right. Not yet. This is how bubbles work. You're trapped in a series of psychological mechanisms you don't recognize. Confirmation bias. You only listen to information that supports your belief that tulips will rise. The success stories, the rising prices, the bullish predictions. You dismiss skeptics as ignorant or jealous. They don't understand. They're not in the market. They don't see what you see. Herd mentality. Everyone around you is doing the same thing. That provides validation. If everyone's buying tulips, it must be right. Crowds are wise. Markets are rational. Sunk cost fallacy. You've invested so much, money, time, ego, that you can't admit it might be wrong. Walking away now would mean admitting you were fooled. Better to double down. Social proof. You see other people getting rich. You see them happy, confident, successful. You want that. You deserve that. If it's working for them, it'll work for you. And the rationalizations, this time, is different. The Dutch Republic is special, the most advanced economy in the world. Tulips have real value. They're beautiful, rare, desired across Europe. I'm not gambling, I'm investing. I've done my research. You genuinely believe this. You're not stupid. You're not reckless. You're smart, opportunistic, a risk taker in the best sense. You're investing, building wealth, securing your future. That's what you tell yourself. It's early February 1637. You're at the peak of your paper wealth. You're sitting in the tavern, wine in hand, surrounded by other traders. The energy is still electric. Prices are still being called out. Contracts are still being signed. You're planning your future. With 2,000 guilders in profit, you could, what? Buy a house, start a business, set up your children with proper apprenticeships or dowries. Or you could hold a little longer. Let it grow to 3,000, to 5,000. You're not greedy, you're strategic. You feel smart, successful, vindicated. Everyone who doubted you was wrong. Everyone who called you reckless was just afraid. You saw the opportunity and you took it. Tomorrow, You'll check the prices, see how your varieties are doing. Maybe you'll sell one contract, lock in some profit, let the others ride, or maybe you'll buy one more. There's this Admiral variety supposedly about to spike. You sleep well that night, dreaming of wealth, of a future that's finally within reach. And then one day in February, someone tried to sell, and nobody wanted to buy. You arrive at the tavern on the first Tuesday of February 1637. It's your usual trading session. You've been coming here every day, same time, same place, same faces, but something feels different. The room is quieter, not silent, but the energy is off. The manic excitement, the shouted bids, the constant motion, it's muted. People are standing in clusters, talking in low voices instead of proclaiming prices across the room. You order wine. You wait. A major trader, a man you recognize, someone who's been in tulips for over a year, someone who's made an absolute fortune, is standing at the center table. He's trying to sell. Not just one contract, his entire position. Multiple varieties, good quality bulbs, viceroys, admirals, goudas, easily 10,000 guilders worth of contracts at last week's prices. He's offering them at last week's prices. Nobody bids. You watch, confused. These are good bulbs, proven varieties. They were trading at these levels just days ago. He lowers the price, 10% below last week. Silence, another 5%. Someone asks to see the contracts, examines them, hands them back without bidding. This has never happened before. There have always been buyers. Always. Prices have only gone one direction, up. The trader's face is pale, sweating. He lowers the price again. Still nothing. And then you see it. The shift. It happens in people's eyes. A realization. A crack in the collective belief. If he's selling, this successful trader, this man who knows the market, maybe he knows something. Maybe he sees something coming. And if prices can fall, if these contracts aren't worth what they were yesterday, then what are they worth? What are any of them worth? Someone else starts trying to sell. A smaller trader, nervous, offering his contracts at 20% below peak. No buyers. Within an hour, fear has replaced greed. The fundamental question, the one nobody wanted to ask, is suddenly inescapable. What is a tulip bulb actually worth? Not what someone paid yesterday. Not what you hope someone will pay tomorrow. What is it worth? It's a flower bulb. It will grow a flower that blooms for a week, then dies. You can harvest the bulb and plant it again next year. Maybe divide it into offset bulbs. That's it. That's the utility. Is that worth 3,000 guilders? The price of a house? Is it worth 300 guilders? A year's wages? Everyone is asking this question simultaneously, and nobody has a good answer. You need to sell. Right now. Before this gets worse, you'll take a small loss. That's fine. You can absorb a small loss. You paid 1,500 guilders for 3 contracts. Yesterday, they were worth 3,000. You'll sell for 2,500. That's still a profit. A good profit, actually. You announce your offer to the room. Nobody responds. Okay, 2,200 guilders. You're leaving money on the table, but you want out. No takers. 2,000 guilders. That's what you calculated as your profit point. You'd break even after paying your creditor. Nothing. People are avoiding eye contact. You feel panic rising in your chest. 1,800 guilders. You're taking a loss now, but manageable. You can recover. Someone laughs. Actually laughs. Good luck, he mutters. Some 500 guilders, your original investment. You'll walk away with nothing gained, nothing lost. A man approaches. You feel hope. He examines your contracts, asks questions about the varieties, the delivery dates. He offers you 800 guilders for all three. 800. Your contracts were worth 3,000 guilders yesterday. Yesterday, 16 hours ago. You hesitate. Maybe it's a low-ball offer. Maybe you should wait. The man shrugs and walks away. You try to call him back. He ignores you. You spend the next hour trying to find buyers, any buyers. You offer your contracts at 700 guilders, at 500, at 300. Someone laughs at you, not cruelly exactly. More like despair, masquerading as humor. 300 for contracts that were 3,000 yesterday? What'll they be worth tomorrow, 30? You don't have an answer. This is happening everywhere. Every tavern, every college, across Amsterdam and Haarlem and the entire Republic, prices are collapsing in real time. Varieties that sold for 2,000 guilders on Monday are offered at 1,000 on Tuesday. By Wednesday, 500. Thursday, 200. The rare Semper Augustus, the legendary tulip that sold for 500 guilders in January, that was worth estates and fortunes, is offered at 1,000 guilders. Then 500, then 50. Nobody buys it even at 50. Your diversified portfolio, your smart strategy of spreading risk across three varieties, all of them are collapsing simultaneously because they're all tulips. They're all the same asset class. There's no safety in diversification when the entire category is revealed to be worthless. The contracts you paid 1,500 guilders for, borrowed money, your life savings, might fetch 100 guilders total. If you can find a buyer, which you can't. The tavern scenes become something out of a nightmare. Grown men are crying, openly, sitting at tables with their heads in their hands, sobbing. Fistfights break out. Someone accuses someone else of knowing the crash was coming, of manipulating the market. Punches are thrown, tables overturned. People are tearing up contracts, physically ripping them apart. What's the point? They're worthless paper. The wine is still flowing, heavily, but it's different now. It's not celebration drinking. It's desperate, drowning drinking. Some traders don't show up at all. They've fled town, packed up overnight, and disappeared. Debts left behind, families abandoned. Others, there are rumors. A trader in Haarlem found dead, hanged himself. A merchant in Utrecht threw himself in the canal. You don't know if the rumors are true. You're not sure you want to know. The college meetings continue, but they've transformed into recrimination sessions. Everyone blames everyone else. The growers in Haarlem panicked and flooded the market. No, it was the French. They pulled out. The government caused this with their talk of regulation. It was the speculators, the ones who never cared about actual tulips. Nobody takes responsibility. Everyone is a victim. Everyone was deceived. Everyone was just following the market. You sit in your room, not the tavern anymore. You can't bear to go back. And you do the math. You owe 1,000 guilders to your creditor. That debt is real. That's not a tulip contract. That's an actual loan with actual consequences. You have 3 tulip contracts that you paid 1,500 guilders for. On paper, they might be worth 100 guilders. Maybe, if you can find the mythical buyer who wants worthless tulip futures. You have about 200 guilders in actual cash remaining. Money you held back for living expenses. Your net position, negative 800 guilders. That's more than 3 years of wages. 3 years of hard labor to pay off a debt from 1 month of tulip trading. Your creditor wants payment. He's been polite so far, but firm. He has other debtors. Half the city is in debt because of tulips, and he needs to collect what he can. You have no way to pay. Your home, rented, your possessions, a few pieces of furniture, some clothes, kitchen items. Not worth 800 guilders. You're ruined. The cascade is total. Buyers can't pay sellers. The contracts they signed, promising to pay thousands of guilders in May or June for bulbs, they can't honor them. They don't have the money. Sellers can't pay their creditors. They were counting on those contract payments to cover their own debts. Creditors can't pay their debts. They borrowed money to lend to tulip traders, expecting repayment with interest. Now, their debtors are defaulting. The entire chain of tulip debt collapses. Thousands of people are financially destroyed. But here's the question: who can enforce the contracts? If everyone defaults, can anyone be punished? The courts are flooded, absolutely overwhelmed. Hundreds of lawsuits filed daily. Buyers refusing to honor purchase contracts. I agreed to pay 3,000 guilders for a bulb that's now worth 30. That contract was fraudulent, insane. I won't pay. Sellers demanding payment. We had an agreement, a contract. You owe me 3,000 guilders. But the contracts were often informal, signed in taverns, witnessed by drunk traders, scribbled on scraps of paper. Were they even legal contracts? Or were they gambling debts? Dutch law doesn't clearly cover this situation. Nothing like this has ever happened before. The courts don't know what to do. Emergency meetings are convened. City councils, provincial authorities, everyone's scrambling for solutions. Various proposals: void all contracts entirely. Declare the whole tulip trade null and void. Reset everyone to their pre-mania positions. But how? Money has changed hands. Some people genuinely profited and left. Others genuinely lost. You can't unwind months of transactions, enforce all contracts, uphold the law. Agreements were made. They must be honored. But that would bankrupt half the republic. Thousands of families destroyed. Economic chaos. Possibly riots. Compromise. Settle all contracts at 10% of their peak values. So a contract for 3,000 guilders would be settled at 300. But who pays? Who decides what the peak value was? Different varieties peaked at different times. Nobody wants to take responsibility for any of it. The government eventually issues a ruling. Most tulip contracts are unenforceable gambling debts. They're void. The tulip debts are forgiven. You feel a moment of hope, but your debt to the creditor? That was a real loan. Money borrowed in good faith for business purposes. That's not void. That still stands. The tulip debts are forgiven. Your real debts remain. You lost your 500 guilders in savings. Years of careful accumulation. Gone. You owe 1,000 guilders. Real debt. Enforceable. You have 3 worthless paper contracts and 200 guilders in cash. Net position: negative 300 guilders after you pay everything you have. You're destroyed. Your creditor is relentless. He's lost money too. Other debtors have defaulted, so he's squeezing the ones who remain. He wants payment. Monthly installments if you can't pay it all. But substantial installments. You might lose your home, your possessions, everything. Debtor's prison is a real possibility. The Dutch have laws about unpaid debts. You could be imprisoned until family or friends pay your debts for you. If they can, if they will. Your family is devastated. Your wife won't look at you. Your children are confused, scared. They hear the arguments through the walls. They see your despair. Your reputation is ruined. Not just as a failed trader, half the city failed at tulips, but you abandoned your actual job. You gambled your family's security. You borrowed money you couldn't repay. People know. Word spreads. You're not a clever investor who got unlucky. You're a fool who got what he deserved. 1 month ago, you were worth 3,000 guilders on paper. You were planning your future, a better house, security, respect. Today, you're worth less than nothing. You're in debt. You can't repay for flower bulbs you can't sell. The Tulip Mania is over. The accounting of the damage, that's just beginning. The weeks after the crash are difficult. That's an understatement, but you don't have better words for it. You're hiding from your creditor. Not literally hiding. You can't actually disappear, but you avoid the streets he frequents. You time your errands carefully. You don't answer the door unless you know who's knocking. Every knock makes your heart race. Every footstep outside, every voice in the hallway. Is it him? Is it his representative? Are they coming to seize your possessions? To drag you to court? The fear is constant. You've sold your better clothes. The new coat you bought when you thought you were a successful trader, gone. Sold for maybe a tenth of what you paid. Your spare shoes, some furniture, kitchen items you don't absolutely need. Every guilder helps chip away at the debt. Slowly, painfully slowly, your family is ashamed. Your wife, she's furious, hurt, disappointed, all of it. She warned you. Not strongly, everyone was caught up in the mania, but she expressed concern. You dismissed it. Now she can't look at you without resentment in her eyes. Your children don't fully understand, but they know something's wrong. They're eating less, cheaper food. The little treats and luxuries that briefly appeared during your wealthy period are gone. They hear the arguments through the walls. Your wife's voice, sharp with anger. Your voice, defensive, then defeated. The pride you felt a month ago, the confidence, the swagger of a successful trader, it's completely gone. You feel stupid, humiliated, desperate. Your creditor is surprisingly sympathetic at first. These things happen, he says. The tulip market was unusual. Many people lost money. But his sympathy has limits. He still wants his 1,000 guilders, plus interest, which is accumulating. You negotiate a payment plan. 50 guilders per month. That's nearly impossible, but you agree, because what choice do you have? 50 guilders per month means you need to earn more than that to also feed your family, pay rent, survive. You're back to your old job, if they'll take you. Your former employer is not pleased. You abandoned your position to chase tulip wealth. You were unreliable, unprofessional. But he needs workers, and you're desperate enough to accept lower wages than before. So you're hired back, at reduced pay, with no guarantee of continued employment. You work every day, long hours, and every guilder you earn goes to the debt first, survival second. This will take years. At 50 guilders per month, if you can maintain that, which is uncertain, it'll take 20 months to pay off the principal. Add the accumulating interest, and you're looking at 2 years minimum. Maybe 3. 3 years of grinding poverty to pay for 1 month of delusion. The dream of wealth is replaced by the reality of debt servitude. You can't escape the social consequences. Tulip trader is an insult now. You hear it on the streets, muttered, sometimes shouted. He was a tulip trader. Lost everything. Fool. You're mocked. Not constantly, Not by everyone, but enough. Former friends cross the street to avoid you. Not because they hate you necessarily, but because association with failure is contaminating, and because they're embarrassed for you, for themselves, if they traded too. You're a cautionary tale. Mothers point you out to their sons. See that man? He gambled on tulips. Now look at him. Let that be a lesson. The shame is overwhelming. You know others are in the same situation. Hundreds, maybe thousands of people lost money on tulips. But that doesn't make it easier. Shared misery is still misery. Some former traders leave Amsterdam entirely, flee to other cities, other countries, hoping to escape their debts and their reputations. Others drink. Heavily. Constantly. You've seen them in the taverns, not the tulip trading taverns. Those are empty now. The cheap places. Drinking away their shame and their reality. A few suicides, not many. The Dutch are practical people, not given to dramatic gestures. But there are stories. The merchant who hanged himself. The trader found in the canal. You've thought about leaving, starting over somewhere else. But you lack the resources. Travel costs money. Establishing yourself in a new city costs money, and your debt would follow you anyway. So, you stay. You endure. Here's what you eventually realize. You lost. But who won? The small-time speculators, people like you, carpenters and clerks and servants, most of them are destroyed, bankrupted, or deeply in debt. Some middle-class families lost everything. Homes, mortgage, and lost. Life savings evaporated. But the truly wealthy, most of them got out early, or were never really in. The sophisticated merchants, the ones with real financial knowledge, they recognized the bubble. They sold at the peak, or close to it. They walked away with profits. They're quietly wealthy now. They don't brag about it. That would be tasteless. But they profited enormously. The wealth didn't disappear. It transferred. From the naive to the sophisticated. From the late buyers to the early sellers. From you to someone smarter or luckier or better connected. You helped make someone else rich. Your 1,500 guilders, your life savings plus borrowed money, it went into someone's pocket. Someone who sold you those contracts and got out before the crash. They're probably living very comfortably. And you're here. The initial fears were of complete economic collapse. Half the republic in debt over tulips. Courts overwhelmed. Social chaos. But the actual economic impact is limited. Surprisingly limited. The tulip market, for all the money that flowed through it, was relatively small compared to the overall Dutch economy. The VOC, the Dutch East India Company, keeps trading. Ships keep sailing to the East Indies and back. Spices, textiles, exotic goods, real trade continues. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange keeps functioning. Real securities, real businesses. The banking system absorbs the shock. Some lenders lose money on tulip-related loans, but the system doesn't collapse. Amsterdam remains the financial capital of Europe. Within a year, the Tulip Mania is almost forgotten. Almost. In the broader culture, it's becoming a joke, an embarrassment. Remember when people paid 3,000 guilders for flower bulbs? What were we thinking? Except it's not funny to those who lost everything. To you, it's not a historical anecdote. It's your life. The courts eventually establish precedent. Most tulip contracts are unenforceable gambling debts. The legal reasoning is that the contracts were speculative, based on irrational prices, entered into in taverns, often while drunk, and fundamentally different from legitimate commercial agreements. So if you bought a contract to purchase a tulip for 3,000 guilders, and now you're refusing to pay, the court will probably side with you. The seller can't force you to pay. This absolves many obligations. Thousands of guilders in contracts are simply voided. But not all debts. Real loans, money borrowed from creditors for cash, like yours, those still must be repaid. The distinction is sometimes arbitrary. Why is one debt forgiven and another enforced? But that's the ruling. The government wants to move on, wants to forget this embarrassing episode. There are no bailouts, no relief programs, no compensation for those who lost their savings. You're on your own. The message is clear. You gambled, you lost, deal with it. You're permanently changed. Trust in your own judgment is shattered. You made what seemed like a rational decision. Everyone else was doing it. Prices were rising. The opportunity seemed real. And you were completely wrong. How do you trust yourself after that? You're paranoid about investments now. Someone mentions a business opportunity and you immediately suspect it's a scam, a trick, another Tulip Mania. You've become risk-averse to an extreme. You save every guilder. You don't spend unless absolutely necessary. The idea of investing in anything makes you physically anxious. You'll never speculate again. Never. The trauma is lasting. You have nightmares. Literally. You dream you're in the tavern, signing contracts, and you can see in the dream that you're making a terrible mistake, but you can't stop yourself. You wake up sweating. During the day, you'll see a flower, any flower, not even a tulip, and feel a wave of nausea. Your wife plants some bulbs in the small garden outside your apartment. Daffodils. You ask her to remove them. You can't bear to look at them. She doesn't understand, not really. She lost money too, but it's different when you're the one who made the decision. Who convinced yourself it was smart? The psychological scars run deep. You learned lessons. Oh, you learned so many lessons. If something seems too good to be true, it is. Always. No exceptions. Past performance doesn't predict future results. Just because prices rose for 6 months doesn't mean they'll rise forever. Markets can be irrational, longer than you can remain solvent, but not forever. Eventually, reality reasserts itself. Don't invest what you can't afford to lose. Ever. Don't borrow to speculate. The leverage magnifies gains but also losses, and the debt remains when the asset becomes worthless. Assets only have value if someone will buy them. A tulip contract worth 3,000 guilders is worthless if no one will pay 3,000 guilders. Intrinsic value matters. What is the thing actually worth? What utility does it provide? A flower that blooms once and dies is not worth a year's wages. No matter what the market says, herd mentality is dangerous. When everyone agrees something is true, be suspicious. When everyone is buying, maybe it's time to sell. These lessons are obvious now, painfully obvious, but you didn't see them then. Nobody did. Or rather, some people did. The smart money that got out, but you didn't listen. You're not the only one learning lessons, theoretically. The entire Republic experienced this. Thousands participated. Everyone witnessed the collapse. Some blame manipulation, market manipulation, by sophisticated traders who pumped prices and dumped at the peak. That's not entirely wrong. Some traders absolutely did that. Others blame the government for not intervening sooner, for allowing the mania to develop, for not regulating the futures markets. That's partially valid too. More oversight might have prevented the worst excesses. Many blame speculators, those greedy gamblers who drove prices to insane levels, while being speculators themselves. The cognitive dissonance is impressive. Very few accept personal responsibility. I was misled. I was caught up in the moment. How could I have known? The Dutch culture shifts slightly. There's more skepticism of financial innovation, more awareness that markets can be irrational. Preachers cite the Tulip Mania as evidence of human greed and folly. Moralists write pamphlets condemning speculation. But is it enough to prevent future bubbles? No, of course not. Your new reality settles into a pattern. You work, you pay your debt, you survive. The days are long and grey. You're years older in spirit, even if only months have passed. Your dreams are smaller now. You don't dream of wealth anymore. You dream of stability, of getting out of debt, of maybe someday having a small surplus saved again. Survival, not wealth. Stability, not excitement. And honestly, part of you prefers it this way. The excitement nearly destroyed you. You warn others about speculation. When you hear someone talking about a new opportunity, a sure thing, you speak up. Be careful, I thought tulips were a sure thing. Nobody listens. They think they're smarter. They think their opportunity is different. This isn't tulips, they say. This is legitimate. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. You can't tell anymore. You don't trust your judgment. So you watch from the sidelines as new manias develop. Smaller ones, less dramatic, but the pattern repeats. You'll never be that naive again, but you'll also never be that hopeful. That's the trade-off. Safety for optimism. Caution for dreams. You survived the Tulip Mania. Thousands did. It wasn't a war, wasn't a plague, it was a financial bubble. People lost money. Some lost everything. But life continued. Amsterdam continued. The Republic continued. And you continued. Poorer, wiser, scarred, working off your debt, 1 guilder at a time, trying to forget the month when you thought you'd found the secret to wealth, trying to forgive yourself for being human. But what actually happened here? Why did this occur? And what does it tell us about markets, about humans, about the patterns that repeat throughout history? Let's look at the bigger picture. So what actually happened here? Why did an entire society convince itself that flower bulbs were worth more than houses? Let's step back. Look at the bigger picture. The Dutch Republic in the 1630s is not a normal place. It's exceptional in ways that are easy to overlook. This is a brand new country, really. The Dutch formally won independence from Spain only a few decades ago, after 80 years of brutal war. They're still technically at war, actually. The final peace treaty won't come until 1648. But they're winning. They're thriving. And they're Protestant, specifically Calvinist. This matters. The Protestant work ethic, especially the Calvinist version, encourages enterprise, trade, hard work. Wealth is seen as a potential sign of God's favor, as long as it's earned through honest labor. The Dutch have high literacy rates for the era. Education is valued. Books, pamphlets, newspapers circulate widely. This is an informed, literate society. Their banking and credit systems are the most advanced in Europe. The Amsterdam Whistle Bank, the Exchange Bank, facilitates trade across the continent. Letters of credit, promissory notes, complex financial instruments, the Dutch invented or perfected many of them. The VOC, the Dutch East India Company, pioneered the joint stock company model. The idea that you can buy shares in a venture, trade those shares with others, profit from enterprises you're not directly managing. This is revolutionary. So there's a culture of trade and risk-taking, of financial innovation, of capitalism, essentially, though that word doesn't exist yet. But there's also the Calvinist moral framework. Warnings against greed against excess, against prioritizing earthly wealth over spiritual health. The tension between enterprise and morality is constant. Tulips exist right in that tension. The Netherlands is experiencing an economic boom in the 1630s. Trade with Asia through the VOC, trade with the Americas, trade with the Baltic, grain, timber, naval supplies. The Dutch merchant fleet is the largest in the world. Money is flowing into Amsterdam, into the Republic generally. And here's the crucial difference from previous eras. Wealth is spreading beyond the aristocracy. There's a genuine middle class. Merchants, yes, but also skilled craftsmen, shopkeepers, clerks, people with steady incomes and disposable money. This is rare in the 17th century. Most of Europe is still feudal or semi-feudal. Nobles and peasants. Not much in between. But the Dutch have this middle tier, people who can afford more than just survival, who have money for luxuries. And what do newly wealthy people do? They signal their status, conspicuous consumption, nice clothes, nice furniture, art. The Dutch Golden Age produces incredible art, and it's not just for nobles. Middle-class homes have paintings. And tulips. Tulips become status symbols. Exotic flowers from the East. Beautiful, rare. In the case of the broken varieties, having tulips in your garden means you've made it. You're cultured, sophisticated, wealthy enough to afford beauty for its own sake. This creates demand. Real demand, initially. Now, tulips have some biological peculiarities that matter. The breaking phenomenon, those spectacular striped and feathered patterns, is caused by a virus. Nobody knows this at the time. They just know that sometimes a plain tulip will suddenly produce broken offspring with these incredible patterns. It's unpredictable, mysterious, almost magical. And because it's viral, no two broken tulips are quite identical. Each one is unique. This creates genuine scarcity. You can't just manufacture more Semper Augustus bulbs. They're unique living things. The bulbs can be divided. One bulb will produce offset bulbs that you can separate and plant. So there's potential for multiplication, but it's slow. A bulb might produce 1 or 2 offsets per year, maybe 3 if you're lucky. You can't just print more, like you could with money or stock certificates. And tulips only bloom once per year, in spring, for a few weeks. The rest of the year, they're just bulbs in the ground, or out of the ground, stored. This creates a natural futures market. Think about it from a grower's perspective. You plant tulip bulbs in autumn, October, November. They sit in the ground all winter. They bloom in spring, April, May. Then the foliage dies back, and in summer, June, July, you dig up the bulbs. Most of the year, your product is underground, inaccessible. But you need to make sales. You need to generate income. So you sell futures, contracts for bulbs that are currently in the ground, to be delivered after you dig them up. This is logical. This is smart business. Grain merchants do the same thing. You buy the harvest in advance, lock in your price, reduce risk. Futures contracts are a legitimate tool. But futures enable speculation, divorced from the actual product. If I'm buying a futures contract for a tulip bulb to be delivered in June, and I plan to sell that contract in March, I'm not buying a flower. I'm betting on price movements. I don't care about the actual tulip. I care about what the market thinks it's worth. And when everyone is doing this, when the market shifts from growers and collectors to pure speculators, you've created a casino. The tulip trade starts formally. Actual sales of actual bulbs between growers and wealthy collectors. But it moves into the taverns. This is where it becomes accessible, democratic in a way. Anyone can walk into a tavern. Anyone with some money can join a college of traders. You don't need to be a merchant with an established business. You don't need connections, just capital or the appearance of capital. This democratizes access, which sounds good, but it also removes professional oversight. There's no clearinghouse, no margin requirements, no regulatory body ensuring people can actually pay their obligations. Just promissory notes and handshakes. And alcohol. The trading happens in taverns, where wine flows freely, where judgment is impaired, where social pressure and competitive ego drive decisions. This is a recipe for excess. Here's something historians have noted. There was a plague outbreak in 1636, bubonic plague, the same disease that caused the Black Death centuries earlier. It sweeps through the Dutch Republic, killing thousands. This has multiple effects. Labor shortages. When workers die, the survivors can demand higher wages. There's more disposable income among the working class. Also, possibly a psychological effect, a life is short, take risks mentality. When plague is killing your neighbors, maybe you're more willing to gamble on tulips. And here's a market effect. Some growers and sellers die. Their tulip collections are disrupted. This creates temporary scarcity, which might fuel price spikes. It's hard to quantify, but the plague probably contributed to the mania's intensity. But ultimately, Tulip Mania is about psychology. The bubble exhibits patterns that are now well documented, that appear in every bubble. Herding behavior. Everyone's doing it, so it must be right. Safety in numbers, social proof, confirmation bias. You only pay attention to information that supports your belief. Success stories confirm tulips are good investments. Warnings are dismissed as ignorance or jealousy. Recency bias. Recent price movements predict future movements. Tulips went up for 6 months, so they'll keep going up. The disposition effect, holding losing positions, hoping they'll recover, selling winners too early because you're afraid of losing profits. Overconfidence. You think you're smarter than the average trader. You'll get out at the top. You can recognize when the bubble's about to pop. These patterns repeat in every bubble, every single one. Because human psychology doesn't change. We're pattern recognition machines. We see prices rising and we extrapolate. We're social creatures. We follow the crowd. We're loss-averse, but also greed-susceptible. We're not nearly as rational as we think we are, especially in groups. Individual humans can be smart. Crowds are often stupid. Why did it crash? Because it had to. Bubbles always crash eventually. Prices become detached from any rational valuation. A tulip bulb produces a flower. A pretty flower, sure. But it's not shelter. It's not food. It's not a productive asset generating income. It's a flower. It blooms for a week or two. Then it's gone. You can harvest the bulb and plant it again, but that's the extent of the utility. Is that worth 3,000 guilders? The price of a house? No, obviously not. But in the grip of the mania, people convince themselves that it is, or they don't care about intrinsic value because they're flipping contracts, not buying flowers. Eventually, though, someone needs to sell. Someone gets nervous. Someone needs cash. Someone realizes the whole thing is insane. They try to sell. And the buyers aren't there, or they're there, but at much lower prices. Once selling starts, panic spreads. If prices can fall, if the inexorable rise can reverse, then maybe they'll fall further. Better sell now before they fall more. Everyone has the same thought simultaneously. The bids disappear. Nobody wants to catch a falling knife. Prices collapse to something near intrinsic value. For tulips, That's a few guilders per bulb. Maybe 10 or 20 for a nice variety. Maybe 100 for something genuinely rare and beautiful. But not thousands. Never thousands. Now modern historians debate the scale of Tulip Mania. Some argue it's been exaggerated, that the popular narrative, everyone in Holland trading tulips, the entire economy at risk, is overblown. Maybe only a few hundred serious traders were involved. Maybe the economic impact was minimal. Maybe most of the famous stories are apocryphal or exaggerated. These historians point to limited documentary evidence of widespread financial ruin. They suggest the mania was more localized and less economically significant than the legend suggests. But contemporary sources do describe something extraordinary happening. Pamphlets and sermons condemning tulip speculation, court records full of tulip-related disputes, cultural references that persist for centuries, and the cultural memory suggests significant trauma. The Dutch don't forget this. It becomes a cautionary tale told for generations. Even if the scale has been exaggerated, and that's possible, it was real enough. Real enough to ruin lives. Real enough to create genuine financial distress. Real enough to traumatize a society. The exact numbers might be debatable. The phenomenon is not. Tulip Mania is history's first well-documented speculative bubble. But it's not the last. Not even close. The South Sea Bubble in 1720. British investors convinced that a company with monopoly trading rights to South America would generate infinite wealth. Isaac Newton lost money in this one. Railway mania in the 1840s. Railways are revolutionary technology. Every proposed railway will be profitable, except most weren't. The 1929 stock market crash. Stocks only go up. Buy on margin. The new era of permanent prosperity, until it wasn't. The dot-com bubble around 2000. The internet changes everything. Revenue doesn't matter. Eyeballs and traffic are the new metrics. Then reality arrived. The housing bubble in 2008. Real estate only goes up. Subprime mortgages are safe if you bundle them. Financial engineering defeats risk. It didn't. Cryptocurrencies and NFTs in the early 2020s. Digital scarcity, blockchain revolution, some JPEGs selling for millions. You can see where this is going. The pattern repeats. The assets change, the technology changes, the specifics vary, but the fundamental dynamics are identical. Why do we keep falling for bubbles? Because every generation thinks this time is different, and in surface details, it is different. Tulips aren't railways. Railways aren't internet stocks. Internet stocks aren't houses. Each bubble has a narrative, a story about why this particular asset is special, why traditional valuation methods don't apply. Tulips are unique biological products in an expanding luxury market. Railways are transformative infrastructure that will change civilization. Internet companies are valued on potential, not current earnings, because the internet changes everything. Houses are special because they're real assets. Land is limited, and real estate never crashes everywhere at once. Crypto is revolutionary decentralized technology that will replace fiat currency. The narratives are compelling. They're not entirely wrong. Railways did change civilization. The internet did transform the economy. But the valuations get detached from reality, and the psychological patterns take over. Rapid price increases attract attention. Success stories spread virally. Failures are hidden or rationalized. Greed overwhelms caution. Rationality fails under social pressure. When everyone around you is getting rich or appears to be getting rich, Staying out feels stupid, feels like you're missing out. FOMO, fear of missing out. It's a powerful motivator. We're not as rational as we think we are. We're emotional creatures who justify our emotions with post hoc rationalizations. So what are the enduring lessons? Markets can be irrational for extended periods, longer than seems possible, but not forever. Speculation is not investing. Investing means buying productive assets that generate value. Speculating means betting on price movements. They're different. Leverage amplifies losses. Borrowing to invest multiplies your gains if you're right, but it multiplies your losses if you're wrong. And it creates debt that persists when the asset becomes worthless. Intrinsic value matters. What is the thing actually worth? What utility does it provide? What income does it generate? If you can't answer that, you're speculating, not investing. Don't follow the crowd blindly. When everyone agrees, be suspicious. Consensus is often wrong at extremes. If you don't understand it, don't buy it. If you can't explain why something is a good investment without referencing price movements, you don't understand it. Diversification isn't enough in a mania. If you're diversified across multiple varieties of tulips, you're not actually diversified. You're concentrated in one asset class. Sometimes the best trade is no trade. Sitting out a mania feels painful, but it's better than losing everything. These lessons are simple, obvious even, but they're hard to follow in the moment. When prices are rising, when everyone's making money, when the fear of missing out overwhelms your caution. That's when you need to remember the tulip traders of 1637. Smart people, hard-working people, people in the most advanced economy of their time, people who convinced themselves that flower bulbs were worth fortunes, and who learned, painfully, that they were wrong. So where does this leave you? Sitting in your small apartment in Amsterdam, working off your debt, years older in spirit. What does the future hold? So let's be honest about something. You wouldn't survive Tulip Mania. And before you think, no, I'm smarter than that, I'd see through it. No, you wouldn't. Here's why. If you're living in Amsterdam in 1637, the social pressure is immense. Everyone around you is trading tulips. Your neighbors, your colleagues, people at church, people at the market. The success stories are everywhere. You hear them constantly. Jan bought a Switzer for 200 guilders, sold it for 800. My cousin made enough to buy a house. The baker down the street retired from baking. He's a full-time tulip trader now. The logic seems sound at first. Tulips are rare. The wealthy want them. Demand is increasing. The Dutch Republic is prosperous. Prices have been rising steadily for months. Why wouldn't they continue? Your cognitive biases are working against you. Confirmation bias makes you notice the success stories and ignore the warnings. Recency bias makes you think recent price movements predict the future. Social proof makes the crowd seem wise. FOMO, fear of missing out, that primal anxiety that everyone else is getting ahead while you're standing still. You'd need extraordinary discipline to stay out. You'd need to watch your neighbors get wealthy or appear to get wealthy while you work your regular job for regular wages. You'd need to endure being called timid, foolish, someone who doesn't understand opportunity. Could you do that? Honestly? Most people can't. And even if you somehow avoided tulips, even if you were one of the rare disciplined souls who stayed out, you'd be tempted by the next bubble, and the one after that. Because we're human. And humans are pattern recognition machines who are really bad at recognizing when patterns are about to break. Let's talk about modern equivalents. Because if you think Tulip Mania was uniquely stupid, let me introduce you to the last few decades. The dot-com bubble, late 1990s to 2000. The internet changes everything. And it did. It absolutely did. But that didn't mean every company with a website was worth billions. Companies with no revenue, no profits, no clear path to profitability, worth billions. Pets.com, Webvan, dozens of others. Day traders were quitting their jobs to trade tech stocks full-time, working from home, clicking buttons, watching numbers go up. Sound familiar? The logic seemed sound. The internet was revolutionary. These companies were pioneers. Get in early, ride the wave. Until March 2000, when the wave crashed. Trillions of dollars in market value evaporated. Fortunes lost. Day traders went back to their old jobs, if those jobs still existed. Or the housing bubble, mid-2000s. Real estate only goes up. Everyone knows that. Subprime mortgages, loans to people who clearly couldn't afford them. But it didn't matter, because the house value would increase, and they could refinance. House flipping. Ordinary people becoming real estate speculators, buying properties with no money down, holding them for 6 months, selling for a profit. Ninja loans. No income, no job or assets. Literally lending hundreds of thousands of dollars to people who couldn't document any ability to repay. The logic seemed sound. Housing had been appreciating for years. Population was growing. They're not making more land. Until 2008, when it all collapsed. Global financial crisis. Millions of foreclosures. The worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. Or, how about cryptocurrency? Decentralized finance is the future. Bitcoin is digital gold. Blockchain will revolutionize everything. And blockchain is interesting technology. It might revolutionize some things. But that doesn't mean every cryptocurrency is a good investment. Bitcoin hit nearly $70,000 in 2021. People were taking second mortgages to buy crypto. HODL, hold on for dear life. Diamond hands. To the moon. The rhetoric is identical to tulip taverns. Get in now or miss out forever. You don't understand the technology. This is the future of money. And when you questioned it, you were dismissed as a boomer, as someone who doesn't get it, as NGMI, not gonna make it. Then the crash. Bitcoin fell to $16,000. Billions evaporated, crypto lending platforms collapsed, people lost life savings, some held on. And maybe they've recovered, depending on when you're listening to this. Maybe Bitcoin is back up, maybe it's crashed again, but the pattern is the same. NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Digital scarcity has real value. And, okay, there's an argument for that. Digital ownership, verified on blockchain, but JPEGs of apes selling for millions of dollars? Bored Ape Yacht Club, CryptoPunks, profile pictures trading for the price of houses. The logic? You're buying into an exclusive community, digital status symbols. The value will increase because, well, because it has been increasing. Celebrities buying in. Social media flooded with success stories. FOMO everywhere. Until the market crashed. NFTs that sold for $300,000 now worth maybe $3,000 if you can find a buyer. Which sounds absurd until you remember tulip bulbs. Same pattern, different technology. Same human psychology. Why do we repeat history? Because we think we're smarter than our ancestors. We have better information, real-time data, sophisticated analytical tools, financial education, the internet. Surely we won't fall for something as obviously stupid as tulip bulbs worth houses. But we have the same brains as the Dutch traders of 1637, the same emotional architecture, the same cognitive biases, the same social dynamics. Technology changes, communication changes, the assets change, human nature doesn't. We're still driven by greed and fear, by FOMO and overconfidence, by the desire to believe we've found the secret to easy wealth. The dream of easy wealth is eternally seductive. Working hard for modest, steady gains seems boring. It seems like you're doing it wrong. When your neighbor gets rich quick or appears to, you feel like a fool for not joining in. You feel like you're missing the opportunity of a lifetime. FOMO is not a new phenomenon invented by social media. It's been driving bad financial decisions for centuries. The Dutch tulip traders felt it in 1637. The South Sea investors felt it in 1720. The railway speculators felt it in 1847. Your grandparents felt it in 1929. Your parents felt it in 2000 or 2008. You feel it now. It's universal. It's human. So what are the red flags? What should make you immediately suspicious? This time is different. That's the most dangerous phrase in finance. You don't understand the new paradigm. Translation: traditional valuation doesn't apply because we say so. Get in now or miss out forever. Artificial urgency. Pressure to act without thinking. Everyone I know is making money. Survivorship bias. You're not hearing from the losers. It's going to the moon. Number go up. Mises' investment thesis. Past performance guarantees future results. It literally doesn't. There are legal disclaimers about this. You can't lose. Yes, you can. You absolutely can. If you hear these phrases, run, walk away, close the browser tab, hang up the phone, leave the tavern. What you actually need is boring. Diversified investments across multiple asset classes, stocks, bonds, maybe some real estate, index funds that track the market. Not trying to beat the market, just matching it. A time horizon measured in decades, not days or months. Patience, discipline, the ability to ignore get-rich-quick schemes, contentment with reasonable returns. 7% annually, compounded over decades, makes you wealthy. Not exciting, not sexy, not something you brag about at parties, but it works. The people who survived Tulip Mania were boring. They didn't trade tulips. They stuck to their regular businesses, their normal jobs. They were mocked, called timid, called fools who didn't understand opportunity until the crash. And then, suddenly, they were the smart ones. Being boring saves you. Being exciting destroys you. That's the uncomfortable truth. Think about you in Amsterdam, 1637. You arrived with dreams, legitimate dreams of a better life. You saw what looked like a genuine opportunity. You took a risk. A calculated risk, you thought. You lost everything. And you're not alone. Thousands joined you in the tulip taverns. Most lost. A few won. That's how bubbles work. The wealth doesn't disappear. It transfers. From the many to the few. From the late entrants to the early exits. From you to someone smarter, luckier, or better connected. The house always wins. And you're not the house. Be grateful, genuinely grateful, for modern financial protections. They're imperfect. They don't prevent all disasters, but we have financial regulation. The SEC, imperfect as it is, prevents some fraud. We have bankruptcy laws. You can't be thrown in debtor's prison anymore. FDIC insurance protects bank deposits. Your savings won't vanish if the bank fails. You can diversify easily. Buy index funds that spread risk across thousands of companies. Information is more available. You can research investments read analyses, access data that was unimaginable in 1637. But you can still lose everything if you're reckless. The tools to destroy yourself financially are more accessible than ever. Margin trading, options, leveraged ETFs, cryptocurrency exchanges offering 100x leverage. You can gamble away your life savings in minutes from your phone. The guardrails exist, but you can climb over them if you want to. Here's what you need to understand. You probably wouldn't survive Tulip Mania. Not because you're stupid, you're not. Not because you're reckless, you might not be, but because you're human. And humans are really, really bad at resisting manias when they're in the middle of them. The best defense is knowing your weaknesses, knowing that you're susceptible to FOMO, to social proof, to confirmation bias, to greed, and avoiding situations that exploit those weaknesses. Don't put yourself in the Tulip Tavern. If you're there, you'll trade. The pressure is too intense, the temptation too strong, and you'll probably lose. As you lie in your modern bed, comfortable, flea-free, temperature-controlled, with your modest retirement account, boring, diversified, steadily growing. Be thankful you weren't in Amsterdam in 1637. Be thankful you learned this lesson through history, not through personal financial ruin. And be wary, because the next mania is coming. It's always coming. It will look different. It will feel different. The technology will be new. The narrative will be compelling. It won't be tulips, but it will be the same. Rapid price increases, success stories everywhere, FOMO, social pressure. This time is different. And you'll be tempted. When you are, and you will be, remember the tulips. Remember the Amsterdam taverns in February 1637. Remember the traders crying. The contracts worthless. The debt that persisted when the assets evaporated. Remember that you're human, with human weaknesses. And choose boring. Choose slow. Choose steady. It's not exciting, but you'll survive. So that's why you wouldn't survive the Tulip Mania of 1637, not through any fault of your own, but because surviving a bubble requires either superhuman discipline or dumb luck, usually both. Learn from the Dutch tulip traders. Understand them. Empathize with them. But don't be them. Now rest easy. Your money is probably safe. Probably. As long as you remember the tulips. Sleep well. Next time on Chronicle Keepers, we're leaving the financial disasters of Amsterdam behind. We're heading somewhere even more chaotic. Ancient Babylon, 1800 years before Christ. To the markets where one wrong deal could cost you a hand. Where the Code of Hammurabi determined whether you lived or died for your business mistakes. Let's step into the dust and heat and see how long you'd last. Good night. So, we've learned our lesson, right? We watched tulip prices soar and crash. We lost everything in Amsterdam. We'll never fall for a speculative bubble again. Except, let's jump forward 3.5 centuries, from 17th century Amsterdam to 1980s Tokyo, where an entire nation convinced itself that real estate prices would rise forever, where the grounds of the Imperial Palace were theoretically worth more than all of California, where golf club memberships sold for the price of houses. We're heading to Japan's lost decade, to the bubble that made tulips look quaint, where the lessons of history were forgotten, the patterns repeated, and an economic superpower discovered that, yes, actually, asset prices can fall. Welcome to the Japanese asset bubble, where the party lasted longer, the crash hurt more, and the hangover lasted 30 years.